The story of the Separations Act. This story begins in 1883 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. With an eighth grade education, coupled with a handful of self-taught educational years, Joseph Houston started working for the architectural firm of Furness and Sons. After a few years working at this firm, Houston enrolls at Princeton University, where he was an honors student, and upon graduation, he returns to Philadelphia to work for Furness and Sons. At Furness and Sons, Houston works on some marquee buildings, like the Pennsylvania Railroad's Broad Street Station, which stood until 1953, and where Penn Center in Philadelphia's central business district now stands. After a few years at this firm and designing some notable projects, Houston decides to start his own firm. In 1898, Houston and his older brother set off to see the great art and architecture in Europe. His brother encounters some major health issues, which nearly takes his life. While his brother was recuperating in Europe, Houston takes advantage of his time in Europe with his sketchbook to capture inspirational sights, and after seeing and drawing St. Peter's Basilica, he wrote, "One day I hope to build a building as grand." In 1901, Houston had the opportunity to design a grand building and entered Pennsylvania's Capitol Building Design Competition. He was considered a long shot due to his youth and design inexperience compared to others interested at the time. But he was chosen the winner. Houston intended to make the Pennsylvania Capitol a monument to the new Renaissance. He succeeded, and on October 4th, 1906, at the Capitol's dedication ceremony, President Theodore Roosevelt was caught saying as he entered, "This is the handsomest state capitol I ever saw." While it was a magnificent building, the project was way over budget, 3 times more than the legislature allocated. Shortly after the state capitol's opening, William Barry is elected to serve a 2-year term to the state treasury. It's noteworthy to point out that Barry was the only Democrat from 1893 to 1931 to be elected to a statewide position. He was popular. Due to rumblings about the state capitol project way over budget, Barry decides to start digging around. Barry and his team discover that there had been no oversight, which led to the state capitol project to be $7.7 million over budget, today's equivalent to over $220 million. While this alarming audit report on the state capitol project is being discovered, former Major League Baseball player John Tenner is elected to serve in the U.S. Congress. His name will surface again shortly. Hang tight. In 1910, 4 years after the state capitol dedication ceremony, the legal system finally ran its course, and the work of Barry and his team provided enough damaging facts to convict the guilty parties for their unscrupulous actions. The self-taught Princeton grad Houston is sentenced to 2 years in prison for grafting. Joining Houston with prison sentences are general contractor John Sanderson, state auditor William Snyder, and the person Barry replaced as state treasurer, William Matthews. With little financial stewardship, each convicted individual profited tremendously. But this sort of illegal activity wasn't just happening at this project. It was the norm on public projects at this time. Public contracting corruption was running rampant at this time, but it was Barry who shined a light on the biggest story of fraud back in the early 1900s. Because of this huge story, Barry was receiving a lot of attention throughout Pennsylvania. He decided to parlay this media attention into a run for governor. However, he lost the primary and could not run as a Democrat, but he decides to run as an independent. The Republicans knew that Barry was a force to be reckoned with, even as an independent. So the GOP reached out to the popular U.S. Congressman Tenner, who initially wanted to remain in Congress and did not want to run for governor, but he was convinced. In his bid for governor, Barry plays up public contracting corruption and how he is the person who can clean it up. On the campaign trail, there is lots of talk about the state capitol project and Barry's role in bringing out the truth. This picks up traction with a large portion of the population. So much so that Barry, as an independent, almost pulls off the big upset. Yet the popular former Major League Baseball player turned congressman Tenor becomes the 25th governor in 1911 with 43% of the vote. William Barry finished with 38%, and the Democrat on the ballot, State Senator Webster Grimm, finished with 13%. Due to all the attention that Barry showed to corruption in public contracting, this issue was not going away anytime soon, and others in the legislature and media kept the issue alive. With the state capitol project still being talked about, the idea surfaces that companies on a project can monitor each other if there are multiple primes, unlike the state capitol project, whereas there was just a few sets of eyes on the project: the architect, the general contractor, and the public owner representative. And with this outrage staying alive and public support growing to address it, something had to be done. On May 1st, 1913, Governor Tenor signs the Separations Act, mandating multiple prime contractors on public construction projects. Perhaps 110 years ago, enacting the Separations Act made sense due to their circumstances. But in this day and age, every cent can be easily tracked. Plus, the federal government, 49 states, know that providing options in construction delivery methods is the most efficient way to spend tax dollars on construction.